All right. Well, I'm Davis Hunt, editor-in-chief of the Pamphleteer. Today we're going to be talking to Augustus Doricko, CEO of Rainmaker. Augustus testified at the Tennessee Agriculture and Commerce Committee, the House Tennessee Agriculture and Commerce Committee. I can't, something like that, about a bill, House Bill 2063, which had to do with whether or not people could spray things into the sky, essentially, to change the weather or the climate. That's very crudely put. He had a very good testimony, so I'm going to bring up Augustus now. Augustus, thanks for joining me.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me. Blessed to be here.
Yeah, so for people that don't know what cloud seeding is and what your company does, give us a spiel about like what you do, what cloud seeding is, and that kind of thing.
Sure. My company, Rainmaker, is a cloud seeding company, which makes it rain and snow more over farms, ski resorts, water, and hydroelectric utilities. And cloud seeding is a technology that was invented in the United States in 1946, that's been operational throughout the United States for 78 years, is used for all those applications I mentioned before. And the way in which it works, very simply put, is in certain clouds where you have the right conditions, the right water concentrations, the right temperature, you can emit silver iodide, which is a mineral that has a crystal structure almost identical to ice. Water then very easily freezes to those crystals, creates large enough ice crystals such that they then precipitate either as snow or melt back down into rain. And historically, the problems with cloud seeding have been it's really expensive, it's really hard to prove that it works. And what Rainmaker is doing differently is we're using radar and LiDAR to detect the right cloud conditions. So we only seed clouds that make sense to. And we also can validate that it's working by measuring the seeding signatures and the precipitation that comes from our seeding. We use drones to drive the cost way down. And then we have some new hardware to disperse the silver iodide in a more efficient manner.
Traditionally, the silver iodide is released into the atmosphere via airplane, and so I guess one of the cost advantages that you guys have is doing it via drone. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. So it's traditionally been done in one of two ways: either an airplane. The problems with airplanes are one, they're really expensive. Two, the best clouds for seeding actually have the most water that's below 0 degrees Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit, and so they're the most dangerous for pilots to fly into because the planes can freeze up and fall out of the sky. The another problem with planes is you can't really seed in low you can't cloud seed in low mountainous terrain because it's too dangerous for the pilots, particularly if they're in clouds. And so you're limited geographically as to where you can do aerial seeding with planes. The other way in which people traditionally cloud seed is with ground-based generators, which are basically, these systems that have smoke plumes that emit enough smoke with silver iodide up into the atmosphere, up into clouds, such that it gets into said cloud and then induces precipitation. But those are relatively inefficient. They're not extremely precise. Drones solve the cost issue, the precision delivery issue, the mountain delivery issue, and that's why we use them.
Great. Who are some of your what kind of customers do you pursue for this kind of thing? Ranchers, farmers?
Yeah. Right now, it's ranchers primarily. So we're seeding over tens of thousands of acres in the Central Valley right now of ranch land, the Central Valley of California, thousands of acres of pistachios and other orchard crops, and then our not and then talking to other ski resorts as well about snow enhancement at the beginning and end of season so they can open up earlier and close later.
Very cool. Okay, so that brings us to you testifying here in Nashville Wednesday of this week, relating to this bill. The exact language of it I have it here is a bill that would ban the release of chemicals in the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight. And my understanding is that this bill was mostly targeted at stratospheric aerosol injection, which people might be familiar with is the injection of chemicals into the air to reflect sunlight and cool down the earth. So I'm curious how I imagine that when you bring up what you do, you get some weird reactions. Like when people hear cloud seeding or modulating the weather, the first thing that comes to mind, I imagine people's minds go to pretty extreme places. So I'm kind of curious to hear. We'll talk about your specific testimony, which I thought was great, but I'm curious to hear how the general reaction to you telling people about cloud seeding has been over the years. How long have you been doing this?
We started. We're not even a year old yet. We
Okay.
started in the late spring of last year.
So yeah, I'm just curious how people generally react when you tell them.
It's really funny because generally, the bill in Tennessee 2063 was in part in response to stratospheric aerosol injection and solar radiation management, which is a technology people talk about. In part, it's sort of a response to angst about chemtrails. And the conversation around
Okay.
chemtrails generally goes one of two ways. Either relatively pithy, not so scientific evidence of like clouds in the sky that look like maybe what people imagine chemtrails look like, and then angst about that, or people outright dismissing it and saying like, we're not modifying the weather. What are you talking about? That's impossible. And then when I say, actually, we are modifying the weather, and you know, like, and my company does that exactly, but it's not with chemtrails. It sort of surprises both parties. So that's generally surprising to folks. It's also worth saying, you know, cloud seeding is not miracle working, right? Like we cannot create clouds out of thin air. We can't induce torrential rains. You can do slight modifications to increase the amount of precipitation that you get in the form of rain or snow. Historically, the data seems to suggest on an annual basis in a seeding campaign, you can do another 5 to maybe even 15% in the most aggressive cases precipitation on the year. And so that's what cloud seeding has historically looked like. Maybe we can push those numbers up as we improve our system and our technology. And the reaction from everybody that I met in Tennessee after an initial wave of sort of shock and surprise was extreme interest in the technology because it's American made, because it can benefit farmers, because it can benefit utilities, and seems like it's part of this suite of things that the future of American technology should include, and not just the future of American technology, but the future that I and many others aspire to live in, that's closer to the kingdom of heaven on earth.
And it's an old technology too, which I was surprised to hear. I'm admittedly totally ignorant of all this stuff, so I was surprised to hear you say it's been used for 78 years.
Yeah,
Um,
78 years. It was invented by this physicist, or Irving Langmuir, Bernard Vonnegut, and Vincent Schaefer, renowned physicists in America in the 40s onwards. And we used to have large operational programs for precipitation enhancement, for hail mitigation, all throughout the American West, in North Dakota. There were some programs out in the Atlantic. And they sort of gradually declined because, as I mentioned before, it was really hard to validate the results of seeding because we didn't have ubiquitous LIDAR or ubiquitous radar. And as America divested from it, other nations, particularly China, invested heavily. And so they now have the largest annual spend per year, on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, and tens of thousands of people employed in the Beijing Weather Modification Office to make it rain more over their hydroelectric and agricultural watersheds. And the UAE and Saudi spend tens of millions of dollars a year and are spinning up larger programs. India has programs to induce precipitation to get pollution out of the atmosphere. This is another funny thing. People are worried about whether or not cloud seeding would pollute the air locally or the water locally. In India and Pakistan, it's actually used to reduce air pollution, because if you have, say, a smog and then a cloud above that you can induce precipitation in, the precipitation will scavenge the harmful air particles, the harmful smog particles out of the air as it falls. So it's used there, and a handful of other places throughout Europe and Central America.
hmm. How does the lidar work? Is it just looking for? Is it the same? Like, I guess ubiquitous lidar is just monitoring the same way that the Weather Channel is looking at cloud formations to judge the severity of a storm.
Yeah, so you can detect, the location of the cloud more precisely. You can detect the concentration of water in the cloud. You can detect, to some extent, the aerosols that are in the cloud. So something that a lot of folks don't realize too is cloud seeding is largely inspired by a naturally occurring precipitation process. If you just have a cloud that's pure liquid water without any dust, without any particles kicked up from agriculture harvesting, without any natural sediment or bacteria that's from nature. Then there's nothing for the water in the cloud to bind to, either to freeze onto or to condense around. And so very rarely will pure liquid clouds precipitate. Most naturally occurring precipitation is a function of these aerosols that are there. And silver iodide just happens to be the best or one of the best aerosols for inducing precipitation.
Right. Was it what sense did you get when you were talking to people in the legislature? Were they more worried about did they have any awareness of cloud seeding or how it worked, or were they more specifically caught up with stratospheric aerosol injection?
Yeah, none of them had heard of cloud seeding. At least none of the ones that I had spoken to had heard of cloud seeding prior to our conversations. And by the end of them, they were very intrigued. And some of them said that they would be interested in having cloud seeding in Tennessee. It's also worth saying real quickly what stratospheric aerosol injection is and what solar radiation management is. Whereas cloud seeding is a technology that has 80 years of data supporting its efficacy and its safety, where multiple states pay for it, and also multiple small municipalities pay for it, where nations like China and Saudi pay for it. Solar radiation management is the emission of reflective aerosols into the stratosphere, the upper atmosphere, to reflect sunlight off the Earth and cool the planet down.
Sounds insane.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I'm a technologist, right? And I'm curious about all forms of new technology, including SRM, and think that research into it is interesting. That being said, people have angst about it because it is essentially untested. Volcanoes, when they erupt, emit sulfur, which is one of the particles that's used or prospectively used in solar radiation management. And so you can model out what the consequences of a man-made operational program would look like. But we just don't have the data on what the results would be.
Yeah. It seems like cloud seeding is more localized though than stratospheric aerosol injection, which seems like, I mean, I'm not familiar with the technology, but if the goal is to reflect solar radiation over some expansive space, I imagine you'd try to do that over it's not like you just put up a sheet over your house.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're on the money. Cloud seeding is modifying extremely local weather on the order of like 15 to 90 minutes and can target individual farms or watersheds. And like I said, effects are short lasting. Solar radiation management, on the other hand, is global in scope. It would affect the entire planet, whether someone's doing it in India or Italy or New York or Tennessee. The consequences would affect everybody else. And the aerosols, because they're suspended so high in the atmosphere, would stay suspended longer, on the order of years rather than minutes in the case of cloud seeding.
Gotcha. So what's the deal with this bill? What do you think is going to happen with it?
What I think that some reps in the House want is, I think the reps in the House want what's best for people in Tennessee. I think that they want what's best for farmers. I think that they want American technology and innovation to outpace China. I think that they want new technology and businesses in their state. And so what I would hope to see is that some of them, out of interest in their constituents' well-being and prosperity, would vote to not pass the bill as it is, or to amend the bill on the floor. Candidly, it seems as though the momentum may be against that in this case, despite what evidence I was able to offer them and what good conversations I was able to offer them. And so if it were to go through as is, I'd hope that in a subsequent session it could be modified for cloud seeding. And then I think in other states, we've been having good conversations about cloud seeding to ensure that people are up to speed and comfortable with it before there's any sort of vote on banning it.
But most of it happens on the West Coast. I learned that during your testimony. In drier states, it seems to be more welcome. And another thing that I think we discussed this yesterday is that it's particularly useful for ranchers who are just trying to keep, it's for grass and for the most part, right? Just grass.
Yep. Exactly.
What one interesting thing I took from your testimony was you talking about man's role stewarding the earth, and you knew your audience when you opened up your statement the way that you did, and it was a good point because you think about what dams have done to rivers and where people have naturally lived and pushed them out of regions, etc. It's interesting to think about what the line is between man stewarding the earth and man. I don't know if where do you think that line is between man modifying the earth to his own ends and man stewarding the earth in a good faith manner in line with God's vision for earth. I'm just curious where you think that line is.
Well, I think that man's own ends, when properly understood and articulated, are the it is the best stewardship. It are the best deployments of technology and means for our well-being, and that's part of what that means is like a symbiotic relationship with nature and with creation. And so I don't know if it's a line per se so much as it's just an understanding. Yeah, I think it's just a question of what is man's own end, what is stewardship, and I think that those two things, when properly articulated, are uh, complementary. And one related point is, you know, weather modification is something that I totally understand makes people curious, in some cases wary, because it sounds like you're playing God. And I would reiterate, like I aim to do nothing in my life but serve God. Um, it is a consequential technology, though, in the same way that nuclear energy is a consequential technology, in the same way that AI is a consequential technology. And so if it's going to come to be in the world, which we know it is because China has hundreds of millions of dollars in spend on it annually, would we prefer, as Americans and as members of the faithful, that it is China stewarding this technology, or say like Saudi Arabia stewarding this technology, or would we prefer that Americans have the ability to steward this technology? I don't think that we're a perfect nation by any stretch. I think that I am a sinful man, and prayerfully reflect on that as much as I can. But I would prefer that it was the United States that was able to steward this, and and not leave it into the hands of those that we don't believe to have the best interests of all of mankind at heart.
This may be a bad comparison, but I was thinking about it in comparison to to a rain dance, praying for rain, and I mean, there's like a framing of cloud seeding that could be transmuted through this. It's kind of, I mean, it's a kind of prayer. You're putting silver iodide uh, into the atmosphere to try to produce rain. It's not guaranteed to happen either, is it? It's not.
Depends on the
So
conditions, yeah.
there is an element of prayer to it, I suppose.
And
Um,
two points on that. One, our first drone system is named the Elijah One, as an homage to the prophet Elijah who prayed for rain and received it. And so that's something that I like to share. But then the second thing to consider is all throughout human history, we have attempted to modify the weather. We've attempted to pray for rain, to do rain dances for rain, to do sacrifices of different sort for rain. It's a historical artifact of just the last, say, 100 years or something, that we no longer try to do this. And it's peculiar to
yeah,
me that we now, with more means than humanity has ever had before, are less agentic and interested in trying to, produce rain and pray for rain.
right, yeah, yeah. That's interesting. You said something at the end there about wanting the U.S. to manage this technology and be at the head of it, and it kind of reminds me of one of the things I see you talk about, and some of your friends on Twitter is El Segundo as this center of new American innovation. And I'm very curious about that because, as we were talking about before the show, I worked in Silicon Valley out of college, and spent some time out there, and kind of was I'd say I was, you. I went to school in Alabama, and I moved out there kind of with this idea of what it was like to be in tech and and this and that. Sorry, someone's telling me my mic's low, so I'm trying to crank it up. And I got kind of disillusioned. Like, it seemed like all the mental energy was going to. This was 2013, 2014, so it's a very different time. So it's right, like, WhatsApp got bought while I was down there, and I knew some people that worked at WhatsApp, and it was very much the social gadget era of social media. Instagram wasn't even that big at that point. And I got very, I was like, this place sucks. I don't want to go work on a stupid, like, photo app. I don't know. It just, I didn't stick around long enough to seek out other opportunities. But all that is to say is that what is happening in El Segundo is very interesting to me for a number of reasons. One, it seems like you guys are focusing more explicitly on defense technology, and two, on hardware applications. And, I think your Rainmaker seems like a part of this kind of panoply of genuinely forward-looking technological operations out there. So all that, that's just a preface to give you kind of a platter to extol what's going on in El Segundo. It seems like there's something of a scene there. Am I right?
I would say that there is. I would wager to say that there is a scene here, and it's one that I am extremely grateful to be a part of, because there's a handful of things going on. One, there is this sort of Zoomer Gen Z rebellion against nihilism and pure financialization and monetary motive. And I think that every generation likes to pat themselves on the back and say something to the effect of, like, well, we don't just care about money, we care about meaning and purpose, or something like this. And we all do care about money here and think that money is a good tool, but it's a good tool insofar as it enables you to serve a greater purpose, to serve God, to serve your nation, to serve the planet and its well-being. And so in rebellion against nihilism and in rebellion against the over financialization of everything, like, software is, and I think this is evident in the fact that, like, crypto is sort of this, like, extension of, and, like, the logical conclusion of software, insofar as it, like, has infinite potential returns with no cost to set up, and is really like a get rich quick scheme. And I think a lot of people building an AI now are like, they didn't care about AI a year ago, and that's fine. Like, I didn't know about cloud seeding 2 years ago, and you should be able to autodidactically learn about something and become passionate about it, but not for the sake of getting rich quick. And so everybody here is working on a problem that, one, serves a greater purpose, be that American manufacturing or stewarding creation or American defense or infinite energy, many of which are doing so for the sake of serving God explicitly. Everybody is working insanely hard. And not only are we working insanely hard, or at least, like, I would like to believe that we are, everybody's having a great time doing it, right? Like, people talk about how that Elon quote, running a startup is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss. And like, I don't know, it's not the easiest thing that we ever could have done, but we don't want to do easy things. We want to do things that are hard because they are hard, because it's our purpose to do hard things to build a future, right? Like, I was born in 2000. Nothing has changed in the last 20 years. Like, we got the iPhone. Materially, cars are the same. Transit is generally the same. We don't have hypersonic planes. Gas just costs more. The cost of living is increasing. Housing is increasing in cost. It's harder and harder to raise a family. And there's no promise for a glorious spacefaring future, or one that, serves the vision of people like Isaac Asimov. And I want to see that. And everybody in Gundo wants to see that. And so, we're building technologies that revolt against SaaS, revolt against finance. I'm going to
read a line from the Washington Post article for people that are unfamiliar. This is how it's described, and I thought this article was pretty fair. And so, let's see. Hold on. The clarion call from El Segundo, where the hackathon will take place. This was about a 2-day hackathon y'all did back in, I don't know when this was, January maybe. Is less formal. The city, located between a Chevron refinery, a sewage plant, Los Angeles International Airport, was once home to contractors building parts for planes, rockets, and missiles. Then, in 2002, SpaceX set up shop. Now, it's a haven for a growing scene of deadlifting, nicotine gum-chewing, energy drink-chugging founders of space, energy, and drone startups seeking to bring cool back to American manufacturing. Oh, you see, I don't have mine with me. That's some high-quality Zen pouches you got there.
This is no. This is Lucy. This is Lucy from John Coogan.
Well,
Even
no, yeah, I know, but they're you know what I mean, nicotine pouches,
Yep,
whatever.
yep.
Zen pouches being like the Kleenex nomenclature for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty tight. I had a buddy when I lived in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. I had a buddy that worked at SpaceX, and I used to drive. I visited him a couple of times down there, and you know, El Segundo was I just know about it because of that Tribe Called Quest song. Left my wallet in El Segundo.
I don't even like that song that much, but everybody talks about it.
I just, you know, it's weird. It's one of those songs that I hear, and then I'm like, this song is not good. But then the whole conceit, and I left my wallet in El Segundo is this kind of like catchy, loopy rhyme that it kind of sticks in my head. It's been in my head my whole life since I first heard it, and I didn't even know what El Segundo was. I thought it was like this imaginary place. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of this like off the beaten path place if you're thinking about Los Angeles. The popular imagining of Los Angeles. So it's kind
totally
of tucked away.
People, when they think of LA, you think of Santa Monica, you think of Venice, you think of Hollywood, West Hollywood, maybe downtown, maybe Manhattan Beach. But nobody thinks about this sleepy town of 16,000 people whose population hasn't changed since 1960 that is right next to a big refinery, right? Like many people aptly ask, like, why would I want to hear planes soaring overhead all times of day and night? Why would I want the constant hum of the refinery to keep me awake at night too, and spray, you know, totally cleaned steam out from it? And like the answer for a lot of us is, why wouldn't you want that? Like that's the sound of industry. But I'm glad that people know about it now because, you know, if you are not interested in building something great, if you're not interested in doing something extremely hard, if you don't have deep conviction about what the world should be like, then do not come to El Segundo. Do not build a hard tech or deep tech startup. It won't work for you here or probably anywhere. But if you are a serious builder, if you do want to see the nation in the future improve in a radical way, then anybody and everybody like that is welcome. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, you know, we'd welcome that you come and build with us here.
Cool. All right. Well, man, that was a great talk. I'm going to put up your socials here. Rainmaker.com is Rainmaker's website, and you can find Augustus on Twitter at @Doricko. Yeah. Well, are you coming back to Tennessee, or are you done? You did your testimony, and you're just gonna telecommute now?
I'm coming back.
You are? When?
I think I'm gonna stop in on Monday.
Okay. Well, yeah. Hit me up. We should get dinner or something. If you got time.
That's good. Yeah, totally.
All right. I'm gonna end the stream.
Sounds good. Later.
Thanks everyone for listening.